Hey there, this is just a quick video on Supergiant 1. Sometimes this can be a really confusing topic. However, what you find is it really is just a step into a simpler way of dividing fractions. Some of you might be familiar with it when you say multiplying by the reciprocal. So if you don't feel super comfortable with this, be patient because usually the next lesson kind of like pulls everything together. So this was the lesson sheet that was from class. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fast forward and talk about what that Supergiant 1 is. So first we talked about this. These are giant ones. Why? Because whatever we have on top is what we have in the bottom. 6 over 6 equals 1. 2.5 over 2.5 is 1. A half over a half is also equal 1. So those are what we call giant ones. But what we have here is that supergiant one. Why? The super part just means that we have a fraction inside of a fraction. So we're going to use that supergiant one in our favor today. Also, just as a reminder too, when we take 2/3 and we multiply it by, that's the reciprocal, right? Or the multiplicative inverse, but we also call it the reciprocal. We always get, in this case, 6 over 6, which equals 1, right? We would have, in this case, 9 times 1, which is 9, and then 1 times 9, which is 9, and that equals 1. So whenever we do the multiplicative inverse, or that reciprocal, we always get it to 1. So keep those two things in mind, multiplicative inverse and supergiant 1, and we'll be able to do that. So let's go down here. I'm going to fast forward to this one. I'm going to intentionally choose this one that doesn't have the writing in here. The first step that we're going to do is we're going to take this division problem that's written horizontally and we're going to write it vertically. So from horizontal to vertical. And so we'll write 5/6 here and we'll write 1/12 here. Okay? Now, by writing it this way, it allows us to use a supergiant 1. Now, what we have is, we go first, the bottom part of this right here is that multiplicative inverse. That goes back to the reciprocal part that we talked about way up here. We want it so that when we multiply by its reciprocal, it's equal to 1. So let's go back down here, and we take a look at that, and we say, the reciprocal of that 1/12 is 12 over 1. What do we know? We know that 1 times 12 is 12, and we know that 12 times 1 is 12, and we know that's 1. Now, this goes back to the previous lesson where the common denominator is because we divide by, when we have this divide by 1 here, we can just focus then on the numerator that's above that. So number 2 was multiply by the reciprocal. Okay, multiply by the reciprocal. So the next step is sometimes the most difficult step. It's this supergiant 1. A lot of students think that we need to put in, I'm going to put it in red just because it's wrong. They want to put in 6/5. They put in the reciprocal of 5/6, and that's not okay. We need to make that a supergiant 1. 6/5 over 12 over 1 is not a giant 1, right? If we go back to what we remember about giant 1s up here, whatever is on top is also what's on that bottom, right? So let's go back here. In this case, I can say it a little differently. What is on the bottom must also be on the top. That would make that a 1, right? So step 3, complete the giant 1. Okay. Now, we're just going to multiply. What am I multiplying? I am multiplying just these numerators here, right? So what do I get on the top? 5 times 12, which is 60, and 6 times 1, which is 6. We can simplify 60 divided by 6, Well, before we do this, we keep in mind here, 60 over 6 divided by 1 is 60 over 6, and 66 is, in this case, 10. Okay, so on a quick summary of this, right, what are we doing? If I'm following my directions there on the far right, or upper right here, I'm changing my horizontal to vertical. Then I'm going to make sure I multiply by the reciprocal. Then I'm going to complete the giant one, and then I'm going to actually multiply. Now it just looks like a big cross pattern, I suppose, but hopefully that kind of cleared things up a little bit. If you have additional questions, please let me know. Same process for any of these other problems. Just want to do one quick one to help out. Have a good day.